Speaking of big tech and Mark Zuckerberg, Meta puts out an announcement this week. And by the way, not the only one. We've heard some things from Microsoft about some layoffs, but Meta is reducing 5% of its workforce. But over the last few weeks, Pat, you've probably heard DEI programs being shuttered everywhere. Basically, almost every company except maybe Apple has decided every major company every tech company has decided to either roll back or completely eliminate this effort. Now, this to me, by the way, is just an indication of when you see a CEO that you think is really on board with your political view spectrum, right or left, don't care, just realize that CEOs are really great chameleons for returning shareholder value. So if that's the right trend line, they're going to get on board. When you see the pivot, though, don't be surprised, because right now what you're getting is a Trump pivot. You're getting a MAGA pivot. And people may or may not love that. But what's happening right now is we've kind of gone from a very equity, equality, diversity-driven sort of structure of hiring to a complete flip to meritocracy. And so basically what Meta announced is 5% of the workforce, which isn't a ton, but it's a meaningful number of a company that size, are going to be let go strictly based on non-performance. Something that hadn't really happened much over the last 4 years because, frankly, it would have been very difficult. Companies would have been chastised, canceled, if the thought process was that the elimination was being done for reasons that were just merit, especially if it affected what are going to consider to be protected groups. This is a really interesting tightrope we're walking right now. As CEOs of companies, Pat, you and I, we constantly face the situation of sort of trying to decide how to make sure we incent performance, how to make sure that we always are building a culture that rewards the highest performance company, doesn't sort of cater to people who are dragging the organization along. And also, you know, Pat, and I'll kind of just say this and maybe kick it your direction, but is like starting with Musk, starting with Hock Tan, forget even the whole trend lines of DEI and non-DEI, just CEOs that have basically come in and said, we're bloated. This company's overstaffed. We don't need this many people. We can run with less. I know there was a lot of sort of media destruction of X, but from what I can tell, X is going to be worth more than Musk paid for it. It's going to end up being more valuable. We've seen with VMware, I think Hock Tan eliminated more than half the employees now. That one's rolling and running. So anyway, I think this is great. I'm not going to say I think companies need to always be thinking about diversity. They always need to be thinking about hiring the best people, and of course from diverse backgrounds that can bring more insights to companies. But I think meritocracy wins. I think companies perform great when they're built for performance. That's what our great innovation that we just talked about in the last segment comes from. I encourage it. I think that companies, and I think with AI, Pat, this is only going to accelerate. I think with agents and AI, 5% might become 20% for a lot of companies in the next year or two.
This gets me back to a quote that I've been seeing a lot. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. When I came out of college in 1990, the job market was absolute. Okay. It was hard to get a job, and you were lucky to have a job. Okay. I also grew up in the Midwest, which is the Rust Belt, which, is the fentanyl capital of the world, where a ton of people lost their jobs. And it's like, and with this amazing increase in GDP per person, we've essentially, even globally, have eliminated most of poverty. Have you ever seen the curve, dude? It's like, it's unbelievable. So I think this cycle, we just haven't had, we're not even in a bust cycle, Dan. It's like, like a little blip cycle, right? We overhired during the pandemic, and this is a rebalancing. And like you so astutely said, AI is kicking in. This work from anywhere thing, companies allowed it and promoted it, got out of hand. They didn't feel like they were able to manage their troops effectively enough. So we're here. Yeah, you're seeing the rubber banding. Everything is secular, folks. one of the reasons I'm a student of history is because these big things don't surprise, like this shouldn't surprise anybody. So net, he's making a business decision. And my gosh, have you ever thought that eliminating layers and eliminating people actually speeds stuff up? Like, I see it every day. I mean, I was in the most bloated company you could work for back in 1992, which was AT&T. Freaking bloated and huge, right? This was post breakup. But I see it. And even, I think I managed more than 1,000 people when I was at AMD at one point. And it was like stuff sped up after we did mass layoffs when we changed the process and when we prioritized. So this is where we're at. The new Zuck is interesting. I can't believe he didn't stop by when he was at Austin for Joe Rogan. I'm gonna need to have a talk with him.
When we get the new format, I mean, I think we are going to be talking to his right hand in AI in the near future.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to Jan LeCun, firebrand, Musk hater, but one of the most powerful people in artificial intelligence right now.
Yeah, I look forward to that one. Everybody out there, keep tuned in for that one. That's going to be dropping on the 6.5 network.